This is a very early Guillows stick and tissue model of the Luscombe 8A, a popular light plane of the era from which this kit comes. I assume it is shortly after World War II based on the generic airplane on the cover of the box, which seems to be what a modern aircraft might look like viewed at that time. Note that it has no propeller and no jet engine inlet, possibly rocket powered.
I assume the box was used for all the kits of this size, and the kit contents were stamped on the end. That way you could use the same box over and over. This kit is much smaller than I remember them being when I built the Guillows model kits. Also, the model stringers are much smaller in size than I remember. They're going to be really fragile. Here's the print wood, which is, as you can see, tiny. Tissue for covering. Here's the beginnings of the propeller. And here are the plans.
Front and back.
I'm assuming this, by its size and its limited contents, was a really cheap kit. I can find no date on the box or on the plans, and I think it's probably just after World War II, but it could even be before. Some of the parts are missing, like the wheels and the button for the propeller to spin against, and there may be more. We'll start by putting down the plans and build the fuselage on this plan here directly by pinning it to the drawing and bending it around pins. And in this case, you'll see that there are actually little dots to tell you where to put the pins, which I've never seen before. So giving it a try. Here's the pins in place for the first side. So we now have two fuselage sides. So we'll try and start the assembly of the fuselage by gluing the front former onto the nose, and then gluing the second piece from the front former to the tail. So now we'll insert the spacers from front to rear. Here's the first one in. After what seemed like an endless array of broken stringers and glue not sticking, etc., the fuselage structure is finally complete. You can see the model is going to be tiny. I finished the wings. Here's one side. Once again, I point out how amazingly fragile that thing is. I can't imagine it would withstand more than one flight, but it's also amazingly light. I've also finished the little rudder, and I'm working on the stabilizer. We're ready to start covering the airframe now. Start with the wings. This is a piece of the tissue paper I've cut out to fit the wing and folded in half to cover the top and the bottom. In the old days, it would be held on by a product called Tester's Clear Dope. It doesn't exist anymore, and I don't know what it consisted of in the past. Right now we're going to go with white glue, diluted just about 50%, and we'll paint it on around the perimeter of the part on one side, and stretch the tissue paper over that, fold it over, and do the other side. Yeah, I finished covering the wings and the tail surfaces, and I've started on the fuselage. This wing has been trimmed using a sharp X-Acto knife to try and cut off the overhang of tissue. It takes a very sharp knife and a lot of patience, and I have a whole container of X-Acto blades to try and finish the job. The other parts need to be trimmed. The fuselage, I'm going to try and cover each side individually, but in some areas like here, the fuselage curves in two directions at once, so it's going to take multiple patches. We'll continue trying to cover the fuselage, the parts that remain open on the bottom and the top. So now we'll try and stretch the tissue and further strengthen it with a dilute solution. It's about 1/3 glue to 2/3 water by painting it on there. And then holding the part in place so it doesn't warp when it's stretched. Similarly, the fuselage. I've completed the attempt to stretch the material over the frame. The stretching process didn't work as well as I'd like to remember. I think the main problem was not that it didn't stretch, but that in many areas the glue along the edge let go during the stretching process, and so I had to glue the tissue back down again, resulting in an unstretched section. And that may be because the tissue is so old that it doesn't have any strength, or its strength has been reduced. I don't know, but it wasn't very successful for most of the aircraft. I then reassembled all the components. You can see that the wing to the fuselage joint is just a butt joint between the ribs on the end of the wing and a piece of balsa wood right there, so there's no spar going across that joint, which seems really weak. But on the other hand, the wing has no spar at all except the leading and trailing edge little pieces of balsa wood, so it's basically very fragile itself. The next step would seem to be to put on the landing gear. Now, the landing gear is just this triangular piece of wood glued right there. I can't imagine that would survive one landing in which the landing gear was involved, and it might not even be strong enough to hold up the airplane in static display. So I'm going to add an additional piece of wire to try and strengthen it, because I happen to know that the real Luscombe does have a strut right there, as shown in the picture, but it doesn't show up in the parts list. Well, the landing gear struts are installed, and The wheels seem to have gone missing from the kit, but I have some cast epoxy ones I'll replace them with. Again, you can see that the stretching of the fabric or the tissue paper didn't work out very well. But the next thing is the wheels and the power.
So here's the power system with the oversized for flying propeller, and here's the installation. So here's the finished model. I'm not real proud of it. It's not elegant as a toilet paper colored airplane, but it's going on my display shelf because I'm really proud that I finally finished it. I certainly don't remember this kind of trouble with stick and tissue airplanes when I was a kid. Here's the Guillows model compared to a vacuform kit of a Luscombe 8A in 1/32 scale. They're the same, I think. Thanks for watching.